Hello dear viewers, and welcome to another game from me here at the ancient hold of our ancestors. Today we'll be taking a look at the video game Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr. Inquisitor Martyr, as I shall hereby refer to it as, is an isometric action role-playing game developed and published by Neocore Games and was released in June 2018. This is not the first video concerning a game in the Warhammer 40k setting. The first being Space Marine that I will figure out how to put on the screen somewhere abouts. Where that wonderful game was a third-person action-adventure, Inquisitor Martyr is an ARPG similar in vein to Grim Dawn or Path of Exile. The universe of Warhammer 40,000, as created by Games Workshop, is a vast one with expansive story and lore. This bodes well for the setting, narrative and characters of Inquisitor Martyr. Neocore could have made an equally interesting game featuring a Space Marine, Sister of Battle, Imperial Guard, or even Xenos races such as Elder, Aspect Warriors, or even some Tau. Here though, and as the title suggests, you play as an Inquisitor. And what is an Inquisitor, you might ask, or haven't asked, but I'm probably just going to tell you anyway. Well, my knowledge is not as deep as some other well-informed people on the matter, but what I know is this. An Inquisitor is a high-ranking member of the Inquisition, which is part of the Imperium of Man. The Inquisition's role is to combat various dangers that threaten the Imperium. This can take the form of fighting Xenos races like the Tyranids Elder and the ever-present Orcs, or fighting dissension and wickedness from within, going after rogue psychers and rebellious factions and the like, or lastly, and possibly most dangerously, they take on the vile machinations of the evils of warp space, the forces of chaos. An Inquisitor is a position that grants great power, fear and respect. They answer to no one except other Inquisitors and possibly the High Lords of Terror. They can form missions and quests as they will, making use of the many facets and factions within the Imperium of Man. They are one of a few people that can call exterminatus on a planet, that is, the complete destruction and indeed extermination of all life on said planet. They are capable of wielding the power of the Imperium as they seem fit, spelling doom for those that oppose them. So you see, making an ARPG with an Inquisitor as the playable character gives the developers access to a large variety of facilities and equipment in which to deck out our character. Now that we've hopefully laid out a little bit about what an Inquisitor is, let's talk about the game they feature in. The setting of the game, being on planets, ships and fortresses and more, is one befitting the universe of Warhammer 40,000. If you're a fan of this, then you will really dig this setting and the theme of the game. The high gothic feel of Imperial worlds and ships is really clear to see, with all the imagery you might expect. There are great sweeping gothic designs, cherubs adorning walls, servo skulls, and no shortage of cogitators. There are levels and worlds that keep with this theme, and ones that are truly bleak and alien, giving some good variation between them. The corruption at hand is also present, especially when fighting the powers of chaos. There are Nurgle vats and pustules, demonic altars, sacrifices, and piles of those slaughtered in the name of hellish beings. This reflects the very dangerous and real threat to humanity from the myriad of evilry which seeks to destroy it. Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr has a wonderful start menu. You can click play should you wish to play. You can switch characters should you wish to try another one. You can, whatever this button does here in the left. Then you can check out the community hub, check out the website, check out the Discord, the Reddit, the credits. You can look at the options. There's some other stuff here on the right that's there also, and lastly you can 3D graphics to viewers are nice and sleek and detailed, showing off that aesthetic I've been going on about. The various weapons and equipment look like what you might assume they might look like. Were you informed about anything 40k beforehand? The enemies look nasty and mean, and again nice representations of what they are like in the source material. A Chaos Marine looks like a Chaos Marine, and a Tyranid Carnifex looks like a Carnifex. And if you're not sure about what any of that is that I just said, then don't worry. You don't need background knowledge of the universe to enjoy this game. I do have to admit that with lots of stuff on screen, my PC at least chugged a bit with all the commotion, but it mostly works fine. Interestingly, you are able to rotate the camera, which is quite rare for the genre, with only Grim Dawn being the only one I know of who allows you to do this. Explosions, guns firing, baddies being destroyed and all the carnage wrought by your Inquisitor is nicely animated, fitting into that grim dark feel of it all. The palette is grim and dark, as you might expect, but it doesn't fall into that bleak all-brownness that can sometimes befall the graphical style of a game. The sound of all the explosions and weapons firing is decent here, giving nice feedback such as when you blast away the unholy hordes with your trusty shotgun, or whirlwind them in the face with a power weapon. In such violent and visceral combat, which you'll be engaged in 90% of the time, the sounds of destruction and carnage of weapons fire and gripping melee combat must be up to scratch, lest it feel quite boring and unresponsive. Luckily, it is all wonderful here. The music of the game is dark and ambient, giving you the dark feel to things, tending to stay in the background rather than make a great show of itself, and that's fine. A lot of the dialogue between your character and others is fully voiced, with the Inquisitor even voiced differently between the three initial classes you can pick from. This really adds to proceedings in only a positive way, with the conversing between yourself and other members of the Imperium adding to the atmosphere. Indeed, I think the voice work is good here, and though it can be quite corny or even silly at times, when dealing with such a grim, dark setting such as 40k, you will take all the funny you can. Indeed, the exchanges between yourself and the tech priest in particular can be quite comical.
Initiating empathy modulator. Attempt failed.
So, you begin the game by choosing what sort of Inquisitor you wish to create. This is from the Crusader, who uses thick armour and weaponry to brute force the enemy with overpowering munitions, or smashing them in the face with power weaponry. The Assassin, who uses guile and agility to eviscerate their foe with swift elegance in melee combat, or snipe them from afar with deadly and precise weaponry. And lastly, the Psyker, who forgoes the usual physical weapons and equipment, instead making use of psychically attuned staves and batons, complementing their use of psychic abilities in which to do harm to any baddies. Blimey, I said all that with one breath. There is a fourth, and indeed a fifth new class, which allows you to be a tech adept of the Adeptus Mechanicus, or a sister of battle of the Ecclesiarchy. In this video, we have just played the base game with the original 3 characters. The story of Inquisitor Martyr involves the machinations of an Inquisitor named Uther Tiberius and the large fortress ship, the Martyr. I'll not go into too much, but I can say it is riveting enough to not completely gloss over and has some nice twists and turns, which is nice. You will jump from location to location in the galaxy, searching for clues and information as you attempt to track down the elusive ship and blasting your way through any evilry you come across. Many missions entail you finding some clue or interacting with some cogitator or something, but nearly always you will have to eradicate everything in sight. Besides the main story, there are side quests you can accept which will follow their own story, like a local hive world's fall to chaos or naughty Dark Elder scheming around the place. These stories are decent as well, with their own characters and also usually voiced dialogue. There are also special missions you can do after finding intel in the game, along with standardised levels within a system that amount to killing all the baddies because they're being bad. There are also special Void Crusades, which are a string of relevant missions you must complete, receiving fine awards should you complete them without dying too much. Rather than learning new skills in a talent tree for your class, the skills available to you depend on the equipment you are running, and is very self-explanatory. You want to shoot stuff with physical weaponry, then use bolt guns, shotguns or auto guns, each providing skills specific to them. Want to blow stuff up or burn stuff to the ground? Use a grenade launcher or a melter gun. Your armour will also come with an on-use ability, such as summoning a weapon turret, small distance teleport, or firing off a load of rockets to smite thy foes where they stand. Of the 3 classes, the Psyker works a little differently. They have access to numerous psychic powers which they can allocate to equipment slots as they see fit, along with a few default skills on them. Then there is the passive skill system. Each time you level up, you receive 1 or more passive skill points. Oddly enough, these are used on the skills screen to be placed in one of numerous special skill trees. These cover all sorts of things like ranged weaponry, heat weapons, area effect, single target DPS, physical damage and more. There is a lot here, which enables you to fashion your character in such a way that you deem fit. It might not be as complicated as, say, Path of Exile, but for me personally, that isn't a bad thing. I am a simple old dwarf. Besides the passive skill trees, there are 3 attributes you will sometimes gain a point in from a level up, or even appear on some gear. This isn't like your traditional attribute system which you can add to every level, increasing in number to some very high values. No, you will only occasionally get a single attribute point, keeping their values very low. Lastly, there is the perk system. There are a number of perks you can take that can have a significant effect on your gameplay. For example, you can increase your ranged weapon damage by a strong amount the closest you are to them, increase the ammo size of all weaponry, or 5% damage bonus per second for standing still, just to name a few. So, enough of all that. What is the gameplay like, Mr. Dwarf, you say? Well, I'm happy to report that this is a good addition to the isometric action role-playing game. I've had a lot of fun playing through the levels, fighting all the Xenos threats and renegade forces that dare stray from the Emperor's light. The levels are not too long, with set beginnings and ends, allowing you to pop on for half an hour, do a level or two, then go off should you wish, or stay on and slay some more traitorous filth in the name of the Emperor. The game loop is good, involving completing levels, vanquishing evilry, getting some nice loot, messing around with stats, and then getting back into the action. This is what you want from a game in this genre, and Inquisitor Martyr provides that very thing. There is a whole lot of in-game activities like said Void Crusades, special missions, and side quests to get stuck into, which is nice. I'm definitely not an expert on the end game of this game, but for my desires of building up a character while playing through an interesting story with an interesting setting, Inquisitor Martyr ticks all the right boxes. I'll just mention the question again here. Is it fun if you don't know anything about the Warhammer 40,000 universe? To this good question, I would thrice stroke my beard and say this. Yes, indeed, dear viewers, this game is worth playing, even if you don't know anything about Warhammer 40,000. This is a solid ARPG featuring well-defined systems with engaging gameplay that would interest anyone interested in the genre. There are not many science fiction-y ARPGs in the world. In fact, most of them are fantasy-based, so having one with all sorts of technology, spaceships, and aliens is quite a refreshing thing in its own right. It is fun to take on the mantle of Inquisitor and dish out the Emperor's justice to heretics and Xenos alike, regardless of having any in-depth knowledge of the universe. Of course, if you do know and enjoy the Warhammer 40,000 universe, then you'll be doubly intrigued by this game. I should note that when it first launched, Inquisitor Martyr was quite a different game from what it is now. The combat was slower and felt quite clunky, with loot rewards being quite different, but the game as it is today in 2023 is a much refined and enjoyable experience that is well worth checking out, dear viewers. You can pick the game up on Steam, so if you have any sort of interest in the action RPG genre, I would give it a look. And there we are, another video emanating from the ancient hold of our ancestors. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the other content on this channel. Be good to yourselves, dear viewers, and I will see you next time.